60% of our planet has been consumed by the invaders.
We have the Hellpriest signal locked in. The target is marked, but the signal will not hold for long.
For it is he that they fear, not man, or his armies. They fear the mark of the beast.
Doom Eternal is the most Christian game I have ever played, and there has never been a day where I have been more religious. Hugo Martin, the director for Doom Eternal, said in a famous quote, "The power of fantasy that is earned is far more satisfying than the one that is just handed to you." Through a combination of clever gameplay design choices, Eternal sets out to transform the player into the Doomslayer. Doom Eternal is one of my favorite games I have ever played, and this review will tell you why. Doom Eternal's story is very basic and doesn't really do anything special. It's certainly the weakest point of the whole campaign, even though the cool lore and codex entries are certainly strong and interesting. Eternal's campaign is not, and doesn't really try to be, a cinematic campaign attempting to immerse the player in story, such as in games like Halo. The story in Eternal serves as the backdrop to the entire campaign, but only the backdrop, nothing more. Once you complete it, you don't really think about the story a second time. The entire story is that Doomguy needs to kill the 3 Hell Priests to prevent Earth from being consumed by Hell, and kill more big dudes to get to said Hell Priest, and he also needs to kill God along the way. In fact, Eternal's story can be summed up as person tells Doomguy not to do this, Doomguy proceeds to do this.
Access to surface gun bridge granted. Manual loading initiated.
That is a weapon, not a teleporter.
However, this isn't really a bad thing, as Eternal focuses much more on immersing the player with its gameplay, not its story, and that is where it truly shines. Next up is environments. I don't think there's much to be said here.
Magnificent, isn't it? Now quickly, the Khan Maker is nearby. We must stop her before she completes the ritual and gains full control over the Icon of Sin. Argent energy is made from the souls of Hell's victims. This is the factory where that takes place. Necromol, the city of the damned.
The Hellpriest's position is stable now, and his guardian is somewhere in the facility ahead.
Doom Eternal's levels flow in a way that goes from intense combat arena to platforming and exploration to more intense combat arenas. After all, you need something in between those fast-paced fights with the demons, don't you? In these exploration sections, you can find hidden collectibles like toys, cheat codes, and albums, which are tracks you can play in the Fortress of Doom. Platforming itself is alright. It's not bad by any means, and it's certainly good, but it's nothing that good. It's not something that you'll remember Eternal for, even though it's probably half the level. At times, the platforming is pretty great, but sometimes it can look like some generic level straight out of Mario Maker. I'm also not particularly fond of the rad suit mechanic, which is this toxic sludge thing where you need this suit that is a separate HP bar to survive. It feels a little phoned in, but I can definitely see the intent behind it, being to keep platforming interesting by switching things up a bit. Again, it's not a bad thing, but it certainly doesn't do anything particularly good for the game. But you know what I really hate? The godforsaken purple goo. It slows you down, you can't jump, and the tentacles that sometimes pop out are just plain annoying. I hate them so much. It's really just a gimmick of the second level, but it's not something I want in the game, as it just goes against the fast-paced aspect of Eternal. It slows everything down very abruptly, and nobody likes it. Like with the rad suit, if it were all of a sudden removed from the game, I wouldn't really notice. On the bright side, I feel the collectibles are definitely worth collecting, and completionists are gonna have a field day with this one. Doom Eternal introduces the weak point system, where most demons have some part of them that can be neutralized to make the fight much easier. The hand cannons on the Mancubus and the Arachnotron's turret are prime examples. Again, this promotes different weapon usage, and the only way you're gonna kill these demons quickly is if you switch weapons, so why not? I don't have many complaints regarding the enemies in Eternal. They're all fairly distinct from each other, and once you get the hang of them, they're all quite fun to fight against. Yes, even the Marauder. Boss fights in Eternal are also done really well. You see, most corridor shooters tend to go for a more linearity-based combat when you're fighting against multiple enemies. But when you get to the boss, it transitions to more of a dual style of combat with an open arena. However, in Doom Eternal, that is just not the case. Each boss fight is specifically tuned to make you do everything that you've done until now. You don't need to adapt your playstyle, you just need to play as you normally would while targeting a specific enemy. The arenas that bosses are in promote verticality and clever positioning, things that you've been doing throughout this entire game. My personal favorite is the Khan Maker fight. It's not very hard, not at all, but you can damage the boss at all times and you still need to move around as parts of the arena becomes areas of denial. At a higher skill level, you can definitely just melt this boss, but the way you do it makes it fun. My personal favorite is Precision Bolt to Ballista. It may not be the easiest, that would be lock-on rockets, but it certainly is the most fun. Doom Eternal's gameplay has one purpose, and one purpose only, to transform the player into the Doomslayer. It does this through a variety of gameplay mechanics which reward aggressive play, as well as through Eternal's excellent weapon sandbox that rewards you for using different weapons. I feel that many people who have never played Eternal will look at it from the outside and see a game where the power fantasy is at its peak. They will think that this game is easy because the visuals of the combat certainly do make it seem that way. But don't get me wrong, this game is not easy by any means. You cannot play Eternal like you did in every other modern FPS single-player campaign. This is a completely different type of game, and I feel that many people may complain about its difficulty and sheer volume of mechanics. In other FPS games, surviving usually means cowering in a corner until your health is full. Think Halo, COD. Shooters where a natural health regeneration system exists, or where the only way you can heal is not fighting, tend to nudge the player towards a playstyle that consists of being aggressive at one moment and then retreating to get your health back. In Eternal, you have glory kills. Once you damage a demon enough to make them stagger, you can perform a glory kill and get some of your health back. The lower your health, the more health you get back. You also get armor by setting demons on fire and then killing them. In other words, in Eternal, you have to stay alive by killing your enemies. You have to fight in Doom, or else you're gonna die. This is just the tip of the iceberg of what id Software's genius idea of promoting aggressive play that they pulled from their massive brains. id Software's approach to weapon design in Eternal is something I feel might bum out the casual crowd if played on higher difficulties. In most corridor shooters, you mostly just use a good gun and you're good. You tend to have sufficient ammo most of the time, and if you don't, you can just switch to another pretty decent gun. However, in Eternal, even at max ammo capacity, your ammo reserves are not nearly enough for you to be using one weapon exclusively, and through a combination of clever weapon mods and enemy design choices, its software has made a place for every weapon in Eternal Sandbox. But that also goes back to bumming out the casual crowd. Casual players may just want to use the super shotgun all the time, but in Eternal you can't. To me, there are two separate aspects of good weapon design. The first is utility, and the second is proper tuning of lethality. Let's focus on utility first. Like in 2016, Eternal has a combination of weapon mods for each weapon, and it is these different weapon mods and their interaction with the enemies that makes every weapon's utility. In Eternal, certain weapons are more effective than others against specific enemies. In the beginning, the Arbalest mod on the Ballista is recommended to get rid of aerial demons like the Pain Elemental. The Chain Gun is a decent weapon to just spray into tougher enemies. However, this is just, again, the tip of the iceberg. It tends to be just what you do at the beginning. Speaking of the beginning, the first weapon you get in the game is the Combat Shotgun, but you shouldn't see this weapon as a shotgun. In fact, it is actually a sticky grenade launcher that could be used as a shotgun, but nobody actually does that because it sucks. It can be used to easily destroy the weak points of certain demons like the Arachnotron's turrets. Same goes for the Precision Bolt on the Heavy Cannon. You can use it to one-shot Mancubus's arm cannons and to make them easier to fight, and also to destroy the Revenant's rocket launcher. Even mods which initially don't seem very useful are also incredibly valuable once you realize its true potential. The best case of this is the microwave beam on the plasma rifle. Initially, it seems like a weak mod because of its seemingly poor damage output and the fact that your movement speed is slowed when using it. However, it is able to stun lock enemies. This makes it viable in situations where a super heavy demon could be gearing itself up to launch themselves at you, but pulling out the microwave beam would cancel that attack. But let's talk for a second about lethality, which is what makes the game fun. You see, I could use the Precision Bolt on the Heavy Cannon to destroy this Mancubus arm cannon and then just shoot him multiple times with the Super Shotgun to kill him. Or I could just do this. Quick swapping, or quick switching in Doom Eternal is the key to lethality. It is the only way to dispatch demons quickly in order to survive in later and more challenging levels. You cannot use just one weapon in this game, you have to use all of them, and you best believe you're gonna be swapping every half a second or else you're gonna be staring at a black and white death screen. High damage weapons in Eternal have long periods where they can't fire, meaning that if you exclusively use the Ballista, you're gonna have a hard time outputting proper damage since the time between shots is so long. Same goes with things like the Super Shotgun or the Rocket Launcher. However, if you're swapping between the Ballista and, say, the Super Shotgun, then your damage output is much higher. I've only just begun talking about the complexity of Eternal's combat loop. There are many things I have yet to mention, like the Ice Bomb, quick switch combos, positioning, movement, and that would take an entire video. And because that video already exists. The point is, as I said, this game doesn't just hand you the power fantasy, it makes you earn it. And once you do, that's when you can truly enjoy Doom Eternal. If there's one thing I want people to take away from this review, it is that Doom Eternal is a game that allows you to overlook its flaws. It is certainly not a perfect game, but it does so many things so well that I, along with many others, are willing to overlook its shortcomings. This is some of the most fun I've had with any game, and I hope I can at least get one person to buy it.